Hi, March 2nd. As I said in in my other video, I have many abortion death anniversaries today, but I had the one legal death that I had a lot of information about that I went into quite a lot of depth. And I have an illegal abortion death that I'm going to go into uh, greater depth about. And then later on, I'll do the video about the deaths where I just don't have a lot of information. And this was the case of a young woman named Lola. She was a 28-year-old woman who lived in Salt Lake City, Utah. And on March 2nd, 1906, she died from an abortion in Chicago. Somebody told her about a Dr. Lucy Hagenow in Chicago who did abortions. So Lola traveled from Salt Lake City to Chicago and made a beeline for Hagenow's practice. For some reason, Lola's sister, who lived in Chicago, managed to find out where Lola was and went and checked on her on February 20th, and she found Lola seriously ill, brought her to her home, and then notified the police about what had happened. And the police took one look at her and brought her immediately to the hospital. Now, there was another abortion investigation going on at the time. A schoolgirl whose father was a highly placed diplomat had died from a mysterious botched abortion, and the family was stonewalling the investigation. So the coroner worked really hard to get as much information as he could out of Lola before she died so that he could try to hold the accountable person, hold their feet to the fire for what they had done. So Lola made a deathbed statement detailing the events leading to her demise, but she refused to name the baby daddy, although she did say that he provided her $100 to cover the travel expenses and the cost of the abortion. Now, a police sergeant went and fetched Hagenow and brought her to Lola's room at the hospital about 5 o'clock in the afternoon of February 20th and said to Lola, "Do you know this woman?" And Lola said, "Oh, yes, that's the doctor." And so when the police asked for clarification, Lola identified Hagenow as a doctor who had performed the abortion on her at her office on Clark Street. Now, Hagenow was well known as an abortionist, and she was particularly well known to the police. She had been implicated in the death of a young woman named Minnie in 1891 and a woman named Sophia in 1892. And later that same year, she was implicated in the abortion death of a young woman named Emily. So finally, Cook County kind of took up arms against her in 1895 when a woman named Mary died under her care. Now, Hagenow was acquitted in that case, but she promptly went on to be implicated in the 1896 death of a young woman named Hannah. And though Hannah's brother identified Hagenow as the abortionist, the jury said that they didn't want to dismiss Hagenow's claims that she was just patching Hannah up after a self-induced abortion, so they acquitted her. Now, things changed for Lucy Hagenow in August of 1899 with the death of a young woman named Marie. Between Marie's deathbed statement and corroborating testimony by one of her friends, they secured a conviction. And in February of 1900, Hagenow was sent to Joliet to serve a prison of 1 year to life. She served 1 year. And it's what happens when you don't take this seriously and you just treat abortion as a victimless crime, even when the abortionist kills the patient. She was released, and she managed to keep herself out of trouble until she did the fatal abortion on Lola. She was arrested and held by the coroner's jury on March 3rd, and Hagenow's niece tried to get the charges dismissed, but she did manage to get her aunt released on $10,000 bail. But there were technical issues with the indictment, so the case was dropped on July 22nd of 1907. So let's even get a stronger picture. Let's pause a minute to get a bigger picture of who Lucy Hagenow was. She had previously been in San Francisco, where she was calling herself Louise or Louisa Hagenow. And she was implicated there in the deaths of young women, Louise, Annie, Abia, and Emma. And so she was getting one hung jury after another, but they, in San Francisco, they were not dropping this. They kept going after her and going after her and going after her. So Hagenow relocated to Chicago. And as you can see by this string of deaths that she was getting, bad girl, she was finding it pretty congenial there. So because of a technicality, Lucy Hagenow was left out after Lola's death and was able to perform a fatal abortion on a woman named Annie in 1907. So finally, that won her a longer lasting trip to Joliet. She was kept there for 10 years. She was let out in 1917. Even though she'd served less than half her sentence, at least that kept her off the street for a while. And Hagenow went right back to doing abortions, and she got arrested from time to time. She injured women from time to time. But all of the women survived, and Hagenow wasn't actually prosecuted for any of those deaths. However, it's like something snapped in 1925 because Hagenow started making up for lost time. She had 5 young women die in 1925. And then the last death I've linked to her was in 1926, a young woman named Mary. That makes a total of 17 abortion deaths I could link to Hagenow. Yeah, she was sentenced to prison for Mary's death, but she appealed to the Illinois Supreme Court and they ordered a new trial for her in 1929. Now, the judge noted that there was no new evidence in the case, and she was extremely old and decrepit at this point, which may be how she was managing to kill so many people. But the judge let her go, just telling her, "You had better make your peace with God, Lucy Hagenow. I do not think your months on earth are many." And Hagenow, the Associated Press noticed, was nearly deaf and, quote, "may not have heard. She muttered something and shambled laboriously from the room." So she had more than a few months left. It was 1929 when the judge sent her out. And as far as I can tell, she died in September of 1933 in Cook County. So how safe women are from these quacks just depends on how diligent people are in making sure all your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed. Don't screw up the investigation. No matter how incorrigible this quack is, you got to be prepared for her lawyers to pull some stunts. And once you've got them in jail, you have to keep them there. They are incorrigible. And the minute you let them out, they will be picking up their instruments again and doing abortions again. So when they're sentenced, they need to be sentenced to long, long terms and kept there. The fact that they're incorrigible needs to be part of the sentencing. Lock them up, throw away the key.